Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim Yat kripa tamaham vande Shri Gurun dinataram Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha Kripa sindhubhya evacha Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namah Namo Mahabhadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Tishe Namaha Nityanandam Namastubhyam Premananda Pradayane Kalau Kalmashanashaya Janava Pataye Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Brindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavasya Cha Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavachai Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. First of all, I'm offering my unlimited Dandavat Pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Diksha Gurudev Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Asto Tarasata Sri Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada. I am offering my same unlimited Dandavat Pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Siksha Gurudevs Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Ashtatara Sata Sri Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj and Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Ashtatara Sata Sri Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. My Dandavat Pranams to the lotus feet of all of my Sri Sri Rupa Nuga Guru Varga and my Dandavat Pranams to all the Vaishnavas and all the Vaishnavas. So today is it the appearance day of Ramanujacharya? Appearance. And also the appearance day of Srila Bhakti Hridaya Ban Maharaj. So these two personalities, we must certainly speak something about to also continue with the nectar of devotion. And this morning, Braj Prabhu, he told me a couple of nice stories that he had remembered from Srila Gurudev. So I'm requesting him to tell. Yeah, why not? Yeah.
I don't want to take any time from your speaking.
No. I'd like to hear it. Everybody else is listening.
Before speaking, I pray for the causeless mercy of my Gurus, Srila Bhakti Swami Maharaj, and Srila Bhakti Swami Maharaj, to our Rupa Guru Bhagavad, and to my blessings to all these same devotees. I feel very ridiculous doing this, but I'll try to tell the stories. Gurudev, when he came to Badger, 2 years in a row, he told 2 stories at our house on Ramanujacharya. And the first one, there was Ramanuja's preaching was very successful, and there was a plan. I don't know if it was by the Mayavadis or the Smarta Brahmins, but they made an arrangement with the king to have Ramanuja come, and they were going to kill him in a debate. But Quraysh, his glorious disciple, convinced Ramanujacharya to let him go in his stead.
Disguised as him.
Disguised as him.
Yes.
And he went there and he spoke beautifully and he defeated the opponents so wonderfully. But because it was a setup, they took out both of his eyes. And he ran from that place with his arms out crying, "Ha, Gurudev, Gurudev, Gurudev." And that was the last he was seen of at that time. And after that, Ramanujacharya was traveling and he came to a village where 2 of his disciples were living. One of them was a very wealthy disciple and one was very poor. So he sent 2 of his disciples to his wealthy disciple and to tell him that Gurudev has come, make all arrangements, and we'll be settling down to camp here. So the 2 disciples went, they knocked on the door of the disciple and told him Gurudev is coming with the 100 disciples, make all arrangements. So the disciple got so excited, he ran inside, he told his wife and daughter, and the 2 disciples stood outside for an indeterminable period without even being contacted or they were completely ignored. And so they returned to Srila Ramanujacharya and said, "Okay, now we will go to my poor disciple." And this was a couple that was so poor that they had only one cloth between them, and when he would go out and beg, he would have the cloth. So on this particular occasion, Ramanujacharya came directly to the door, and she said, "Oh, Gurudev, you have come." And understanding the situation, he gave him his personal charter. He gave her. And she said, "Yes, I've come with 100 disciples, and I want you to make all arrangements." And she said, "Oh yes, Gurudev, anything. So grateful that you're here." And then when Gurudev left, she said, "What should I do? We don't have anything. I have nothing to offer my Gurudev. But there is this wealthy man in town, and he's always making lusty advances at me. And of course, I never take them seriously because I'm very chaste to my husband. Chastity was such a valuable thing in those days, and it's inherent as part of the story to understand how valuable a woman's chastity was, or is, or should be. And so she said, "Let me go to him, maybe he'll have a change of heart, and let me ask him." So she went to the man and said, "So my Gurudev has come, and you have so much. Please, would you spare some foodstuffs so that I can make arrangements to serve my Gurudev?" And he said, "Yes, certainly, you can take anything you want, but on one condition, that you come and enjoy with me tonight." And she was taken aback, but then she thought, what is the use of my chastity, as valuable as it was to him? what is the use of my chastity if I can't serve my Gurudev? So she agreed, and she made all arrangements, so much foodstuffs, all the devotees were well cared for, they were camping, and her husband returned from collecting and said, "Why did you do this? How did you arrange everything for our Gurudev?" And she said, "You go give Gurudev a massage and come back and I'll tell you everything." So he went and did some service for his Gurudev, and then she came back and she told him what had happened, and he was amazed. And it seemed that he would be upset, but he was just amazed at his wife's mood of service. And he said, "Well, you must go." And anyway, so that night, there was a great storm, like no other storm. It was raining and so much wind. And the husband had to carry the wife on his shoulders to bring her to the house of this businessman. But before she left, she grabbed some Mahaprasad from her Gurudev and went to the location. And he was pacing back and forth, thinking, because of the weather, will she come? Will she come? Will she not come? Will she come? Anyway, when she knocked on the door, he said, "Oh, you have come." And she told her husband to go home now, that she would take care of the rest herself. And she said, "Yes, I've come, but before anything happens, I have one humble request. Please take this Mahaprasad from my Gurudev." And because I guess there's some piety even in the lowest of personalities in India, he said, "Okay." And he sat down. I'll try to relate as Gurudev did it. I don't know how well I can do it, but he sat down and he took the Mahaprasad, and immediately some transformation came over him. And he was reflecting, and he looked and he asked the lady, "How did you get here?" And she said, "My husband built me." And then she said, "Your husband built you. Oh, I have done so much wrong." And at that point, he said, "Please, you've changed my heart. I want to go to your Gurudev and take initiation. I want to meet him and take his shelter." And the lady said, "Oh, I'm so happy that you want to meet my Gurudev, but it's late now. So tomorrow morning, we can go and I'll introduce you to my Gurudev." So the next morning, the husband, the wife, and the businessman all went before Gurudev, and she fell at his feet. The businessman fell at the feet of Ramanujacharya and told the whole story about his glorious disciple, how she changed his heart because of her Guru Bhakti. And at that point, Ramanujacharya got off his Vyasasana. He walked over to the lady and he put his garland on her. And he said, "Disciples like you in this world are very rare, very rare." And just at that moment, all of a sudden, from the hallway, in comes Quresh, going, "Gurudev, Gurudev, ah Gurudev, ah Gurudev." And Ramanujacharya embraced him and they both were weeping. And then Quresh's eyes became like two lotus flowers, restored beautifully to vision. And Gurudev said, "These two disciples are famous all over India for their Guru Bhakti." That's mostly.
Jai, Hari Bol. Very nice. Huh? Which one was that?
The one about the qualified disciple who went to serve the...
Oh, yes.
I don't want to take it.
No, don't tell.
Anyway, there was a little girl that grew up at the lotus feet of Ramanujacharya. She always was playful at his feet, and she grew up in a wealthy home where Ramanujacharya was staying. And when she got older, she got married to a very wealthy family. went to live at their residence, and they were very, very harsh with her. And she had to do so many duties that she wasn't used to. She had to go to the river and wash the pots. She had to do all the cooking, cleaning, everything. And she even complained or mentioned it to her father-in-law, and he says, if you want to be part of this family, then you must do these things. So, out of hopelessness and helplessness, she went to Ramanujacharya and told him her situation. And he listened very intently. And then he had this very qualified disciple who was so learned and so expert in preaching and in Shastra. And he called him over and he said, I want you to go to the house of this lady, and I want you to take care of all the menial services that need to be done there. Cooking, cleaning, will you do it? And he said, whatever you ask me to do, Gurudev, I'll do. So he did, and he went there, and after some time people just knew him as the cook. He was wearing tattered clothes and his hair was matted, and he would go to the river and wash the pots, do the cooking, and he did this on a daily basis. And no one understood who he was. He was just the cook. And one day he happened to pass by, and there was a visiting Mayavadi philosopher who had been preaching to the devotees there, and was preaching in such a flowery way that they were all becoming attracted to his preaching. So he just decided to sit down in the assembly, and when the time was right, he asked, may I say something? And everybody said, what do you know? You're just a cook. How can you say anything? And one pious person there said, let him speak. What can be the loss? So he spoke so beautifully and so powerfully that Gurudev said that the Mayavadi disappeared and no one ever saw him again. And after it was over, all the devotees came up to the two devotees and said, who is he? He's just a cook, but they found out he was a disciple of Ramanuja, and they couldn't understand why Ramanuja had sent such a qualified disciple to be a cook and to do menial services and clean. So they went and approached Ramanujacharya himself, and they told him, how is it you're sending this such a qualified person to do such menial service? And Ramanuja said, yes, he is very qualified, but there was some little pride. And now the operation has been performed because he was willing to do anything as Gurudev asked. And then he went on to be a great preacher, traveling all over, and that's the end of the story.
Some fault, huh?
Some fault.
There was some little fault, even though he was very highly qualified. But what was that fault? Pride. Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj, he used to say that there are two different kinds of enemies. One enemy is very weak enemy, and the other enemy is very formidable enemy. So the weak enemy that the devotee has to face is the controlling of the senses, conquering over lust, and so forth. And that enemy can be defeated without too much difficulty, right? But there is a very formidable enemy, and that enemy is pride. We know that the word pride is mentioned in the first verse, the first sloka of Manasiksha, Raghunath Das Goswami, right? He's praying to his mind that Sada Dambam Hitva, always give up pride. In this connection, the word Damba is used, which means pride. Always give up pride and develop Rati. And this is the first shloka. Guru goste gostala ishu sujane bushuragane Swamantre Shri Namni Brajanava Yuva Dvanva Sharane Sadadambam Hitva Akuru Ratim Apurvam Atitaram Ai Swantar Bratak Aviache Dritapada. I'm falling at your feet, O my brother mind, falling at your feet. And I'm holding onto your feet and requesting you, Sada Dambam Hitva, always, like Kirtaniya Sadahari, always chant Hari, the name of Hari. In this case, Sada Dambam Hitva, always give up pride. Jai Shri Shri Radha Govinda Ki Jai. Yeah, but he's not only asking the mind to give up pride, but what is he asking his mind to do? Develop rati. Yeah, to develop, he says, apurva ratim. That means unprecedented rati. What does rati mean? It means affection. Yes, rati. Deep affection. Sometimes in the stage of bhav, the word rati is used for sakya rati, vatsalya rati, like that. It means ecstatic love, ecstatic loving emotion. But here, he's listing from the very beginning of the shloka which particular entities, my dear brother mind, that you should develop affection for, deep, deep rati for. Now what is the first one? For Sri Guru. Here we saw in this example that Ramanujacharya was testing his disciple, and he knew how to test him because that disciple was very highly qualified, and he told that disciple to do something very difficult. If there's a little pride, it's difficult to do something like that, isn't it? To take the position, even in disguise, as a lowly, like a Shudra house servant, you see, doing all the different menial tasks, washing the cloth, everything. So he tested him because Sri Guru knows everything. You know how Gurudev used to say, you cannot hide anything from Guru? Have any of you ever had Gurudev tell you that, or you witnessed Gurudev telling that in a lecture? Huh? Did you experience it?
I should have, but I didn't. I never saw Gurudev so grave as he was in Jagannath Puri. When there was some discussion about one sannyasi supposedly communicating with someone in the West. And he came in class and he was so grave and he said, never hide anything from you. I never saw him so grave in my life.
And Gurudev, he used to say that if you reveal to Sri Guru openly, then Sri Guru can do the operation, the surgery. Then he can do. I remember our Ashram Maharaj, he told to Gurudev like this, oh Gurudev, I have so much lust, so much. He says, that is all right, I will remove it. And I forget, it's something like he touched him or whatever, and boom, immediately. So, the power of Guru is not possible for the conditioned soul to estimate because Sri Guru is Sakshad Hari. And Sri Guru can know everything. I've never heard any of our gurus say that as much as Gurudev has. That Sri Guru knows everything. You know? And there was all kinds of speculation. Well, how does Guru know everything? Oh, Krishna knows everything. Guru is a jiva. How can he be sarvagyata, all-knowing? Only Bhagavan is all-knowing. But no. Shri Guru, because he's serving Bhagavan as Sakshad Hari in the form of Guru Tattva, so he can know anything and everything as Krishna desires. So if a disciple tries to hide something, then this creates a problem for the disciple. Because Guru can see it. I think you've all heard how Gurudev also told that simply by looking at your forehead or something like that, he said, I can see all of your past lives. Yes?
He said it at a darshan up at the upper house, I remember one time.
Okay.
He said simply by looking at the lines in your forehead,
Yes.
he was saying to some of the devotees, asking, are you chanting your mantra, your Gayatri mantras, or you're chanting your Harinam? And he said, I know, I can, just by looking at you, I know whether or not you are doing it. And then he said exactly what you said, by looking at the lines in your forehead, I know everything. Past, present, future, everything.
I wrote to Gurudev and I said,
Mike?
Oh, Braj. I wrote to Gurudev and I said, Gurudev, I'm so affected by how people perceive me. It's like breathing. Can you help me? And he wrote back, he said, because you're being so honest, I must help you.
Yes.
I'm waiting for the help.
Yes. And we should not think that Guru is now not here, Guru can't see, now the cat's away, the mouse will play. No. Big mistake. Very big mistake on the part of a disciple. Then that means that there is never really true loving service connection. How we can ever think that our Guru now cannot see, he cannot hear our prayers. How can we ever think that? That's practically like atheism. Practically it's like atheism. The test begins. Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sri Maharaj, read his book, Sri Guru and His Grace. And he talks about how this must come. Such a test must come in the devotee's life. The disappearance from your eyes of Sri Guru. Because then one has to very carefully examine, what have I understood from Sri Guru? Now the test is real, not theoretical, you see. So, Sri Guru is always testing. Krishna is always arranging that the disciple will be continually tested. And reciprocation will also come as the disciple passes each test. Without that, it's not possible for the devotee to become properly qualified to enter into the higher stages. Because that entrance is granted. It's not that you've earned it and you've done the work and now you get the result. No. It's granted. You're granted entrance by the higher authorities. Only when they're pleased by your show of Guru Nishta, only when they see that you've truly surrendered, then everything is granted by them. Just like Ramanujacharya embraces Quraysh, and immediately his eyesight is restored. Even they poked out his eyes. You see? So these examples are there in Shastra. Srila Gurudev, he liked to refer to such disciples as Quraysh, you know. These are great classic stories in the Vedas. But if only we are hearing these stories and we're appreciating that, but we think that, oh, no, I'll never be tested like that. We have no idea. Actually, every day is a test. Every day. And not just once a day. Yes. Because we're always under the vigilant eye of our guardians. Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj, he used to say that we have many unseen guardians. He would put it like that. You know, in Christianity, there's kind of a similar thing about guardian angel, right? Guardian angels, right? Srila Sridhar says we have many unseen guardians. Well, today, I heard a story from Damodar Prabhu, life and death story. You'll all have to hear it from him some other time. But I just was remarking how Krishna brought this jiva out of a situation of practically impossible, sure and certain death. But Krishna equipped, you see. Because why? Because Krishna knows everything. He's in the heart. This jiva is meant to become a devotee. This will be a very big purification for this jiva of mine, you see. So all of our lives have so many different circumstances in our lives that we can all recollect. Many of them we've forgotten, you know, but Krishna hasn't forgotten anything. And he's arranged everything in our lives, every single one of us. And guess what? Not just us devotees, all the jivas. That's why Krishna can say in the Bhagavad Gita, Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam. I am the Suhrit. Suhrit is a very specific word in Sanskrit. And I think Srila Gurudev, he liked to translate this word as bosom friend. You know, bosom, heart friend, right? There are different names for friend. Bandhu, Suhrit, another one, forgetting. But Krishna is declaring that he is the greatest well-wishing friend of every single living entity. Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam. Sarva Bhutanam means all jivas, bhutas, every living being. Krishna is the well-wishing friend. And our Srila Prabhupada, he liked to sign his letters. Your ever well-wisher. What an incredible, beautiful, when we used to see that. And his own signature. So all jivas will become fortunate one day. Krishna is gradually arranging. It may take millions of lives, but actually Krishna was there in every single one of them, just making everything possible. So when Krishna manifests in this very life, in human form, apparently human form, right? When he manifests to the eyes of the conditioned soul, oh, this is the first time you're seeing God with your own eyes. And no, Mr. Manichi, he's not dead. I remember hearing that actually. After I became a devotee, it wasn't before that, then we started to hear there's this one philosopher who actually has made it, he's declared. It was like in the 60s or something, right? God is dead. And I think they had it on the newspaper, some front page thing, God is dead.
He said it 60 years before that, but yes.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
But it's somehow or other, it's somebody started to advertise. You know, Nietzsche. He's made a declaration that God is dead. And when I heard that, I said, I mean, to myself, just to myself, I says, well, how does he know? How can he know whether God is dead or not? It's so ludicrous. So therefore, the best t-shirt of all time, please display that to us, Braj Prabhu. In the top of it, it says, God is dead, quote, Nietzsche, 1883. And then the next comment is, Nietzsche is dead. God, 1900, when he died. But you said that the God is dead is on the front, and the other one is on the back.
That's what I thought.
Yes. So, I will say a few words about Srila Bhakti Hridaya Bhan Maharaj, because, you know, he was the first emissary. He was the first deputed messenger to go to the West. And it was great that we have so much information nowadays about him. He's also got a couple of books, actually. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He did an English translation, not the whole book, but I think the first wave. Beautifully presented. His English was very, high class English. And at that time, the methodology for approaching from India, time, place, circumstance, kala, desha, patra, was to go to the intellectual class, because they had some interest to hear. And because they still had their connection with India as the overlords or the rulers of India. But a lot of the people who were posted on behalf of the the British government in India, they had a lot of appreciation, actually. So little inroads were being made. We see the pictures of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur at the birthplace of Mahaprabhu, welcoming John Anderson, I think his name was. He was the governor of West Bengal at that time. He's got one of those British safari hats, the ones that are kind of round, And he has a nice look on his face, and Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta is wearing a longer coat along with his sannyas vesh, and he's walking a little bit in front of him, and his hand is like this. He's walking forward, and his hand is like this, like, now I'm bringing you. Just see the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And just behind him is another one of his disciples, who's dressed fully in Western dress except for the Indian turban and the Indian kind of Nehru jacket, but he's dressed in the dark outfit with some kind of Indian kind of shoes. And who is that? Param Gurudev, Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj. What a moment. So, Bhakti Hridaya Bhan Goswami Maharaj, yes, he was very highly educated, and there's so much information, we don't have the time to read it, of course, but he was actually the youngest son of 10 sons of his father. Yes, his name was Narendra Bandyopadhyay. So, he met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and he had been highly talented in his early life. He was an exceptionally bright student. He was well liked by the teachers and the other students. And he displayed a natural aptitude for drama and theater. And because he had studied in English medium school, he was fluent in English. And Sri Narendra was his father's 10th, and youngest son, very dear to him. And after he finished his collegiate studies, his father fell seriously ill. And due to this, some of the family moved from their village and rented an apartment in another place in Dhaka, Bangladesh. where his father had been admitted to the hospital and was undergoing treatment. And soon after their move, however, Sri Narendra became aloof from virtually all social activities. He suddenly found himself unconcerned for the affection of his family and his friends, and instead he nourished his increasingly growing compulsion to find a bona fide guru, perform Krishna bhajan, and thereby make his life worthwhile. Bhagavan makes all kinds of arrangements for those who sincerely seek after him. And so, around this time, as a result of his powerful Bhakti Unmukha Sukriti, Sri Narendra somehow came in contact with the devotees of Sri Madhva Gaudiya Math in Dhaka. There, Sri Narendra heard about Srila Prabhupada's extraordinary glories, and before long he decided to set out for Kolkata to have a glimpse of his holy feet on the pretext of picking up medicine for his father. And at Sri Gaudiya Math, Kolkata, Sri Narendra Bandyopadhyay obtained the audience and the inexhaustible affection of Srila Prabhupada, whose powerful Harikatha inspired him to begin a new life. He decided not to return to Dhaka at all, and instead he arranged for someone to deliver his father's medicine while he remained at the Math in Calcutta. And after further hearing Srila Prabhupada's Harikatha for some days, Sri Narendra Bandyopadhyay requested Srila Prabhupada for Harinam and Mantra Diksha. According to the verdict of the scriptures, both guru and disciple must examine one another before establishing a formal relationship based on initiation. Therefore, before giving his sanction, Srila Prabhupada examined Sri Narendra by asking him to compose an article, in his own words, conveying some of what he had assimilated. Then Sri Narendra carefully wrote an essay titled Atmiya Ke, which means, who is one's own? Although the word Atmiya is generally interpreted as relating to either the gross or the subtle body, Sri Narendra explained it in relation to the soul, the Atma. That Sri Narendra Bandyopadhyay deeply understood such a grave subject matter in only a short time indicates he must have associated with sadhus either earlier in his current life or in previous lives, for it would have been otherwise impossible. And Srila Prabhupada was so pleased by Sri Narendra Bandyopadhyay's essay that he had it published in his weekly Gaudiya magazine. In this way, Sri Narendra Bandyopadhyay passed his test, and shortly after he received Pancharatriki Diksha from Srila Prabhupada and became known as Sri Nanda Sunu Brahmachari. So that's the beginning, how he met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and then there's a whole long section, how he preached under Srila Prabhupada's guidance, and especially, you know, those diorama exhibitions, he became in charge of that. And he pleased Srila Prabhupada so much because the way that he organized it, the way that he advertised it, the way that he decided which exhibition should be in that way, it was so extraordinary, and lakhs of people in more than one location, they got to see these exhibitions. So he was a very important disciple of Srila Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and we Western-bodied devotees owe so much to him. Because, you know, when there's a war, there's usually soldiers that are sent in disguise, right, to investigate the enemy's camp and the enemy's strongholds and all of that. It's called, what is it called? Surveillance. Yes, surveillance. So, although they weren't able to immediately start there, but he did surveillance. And when he came back to Bombay by the ship, then there's a photo in the Bombay rail station of him sitting there with his turban and the two Western devotees with turbans on. And there's a whole huge group photo, and on one side there's this one householder devotee sitting, and that's our Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj told the story that just after that they had Ban Maharaj come to a room so they could question him about his experiences. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj asked him, now please tell us what it was like. And so in the course of his telling, then he said, actually the Westerners, sometimes they ask certain types of questions that are very difficult to answer. And then he said, oh, Srila Sridhar Maharaj said, oh, well, what are those questions? Then he began to relate a couple of the questions. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj immediately gave the answer. And then one by one, and finally he came to the last question. And in that meeting, our Srila Prabhupada, Abhay Charanaravinda Prabhu, stood up in that little assembly. And he said, today, Europe has been conquered by Asia. Gaur Premanande. Srila Bhakti Hridaya Ban Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki jai. Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Rupa Goswami Pada ki jai. Gaur Premanande. Vanchara Prabhupada Kripa Sindhu Patitaram Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Shri Radha Govinda ki jai.